Location and stand by.
Clear, 1B1, stand by.
We begin tonight with the sentencing of Tony Hicks. He is the 15-year-old trigger man of the killing of a pizza delivery driver.
On January 21st, 1995, I shot and killed Azim Khamisa. I'm sorry for killing Tariq and hurting his family. I'm sorry for the pain that I caused with Tariq's father, Mr. Khamisa. I pray to God every day that Mr. Khamisa will forgive me for what I've done.
I think that I want to do actually, I feel strong about it. I want to do a little prayer for Tariq, and I'd like you to lead us with this, because you know the Sufi tradition is your faith, and also Tariq.
So I'm going to do the prayer in Arabic,
Yes.
and then I'll translate it.
Thank you, Azim.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma anta salam wa minka salam. In the name of Allah, the most beneficent and the most merciful. O Allah, O our Lord, Thou art the peace, from Thee is the peace, and to Thee returneth the peace. O Allah, O our Lord, give us a life of peace and usher us into the abode of peace. My journey started 31 years ago, and the inspiration to my path was the tragedy that took the life of my son Tariq. He was a student at San Diego State and worked as a pizza delivery man on weekends, and was lured to a bogus address by a youth gang, and a 14-year-old shot and killed him in a gang initiation. Needless to say, it brought my life to a crashing halt. I don't know what's more complex for a parent than to lose a child. It never, ever goes away. There's not a day when I don't think of Tariq several times a day, even though the tragedy happened 31 years ago. But I practice as a Sufi Muslim, and the prayer I shared with you is from the Prophet's prayer. My mom was very spiritual, my dad was a businessman, so I grew up with equal emphasis on my spiritual foundation and my career. In this deepest tragedy, what helped me was not my degrees in mathematics and finance, although I went to some pretty good universities in England. What helped me was my spiritual foundation. I started to meditate when I was 20, and I lost Tariq in my early 40s. And what I downloaded in my meditation is that there were victims at both ends of the gun, that the enemy was not the 14-year-old gang member that took my son's life, rather societal peer pressure that forced many young men and women to fall through the crack and choose lives of gangs and violence and drugs and alcohol and weapons. Somehow I felt compassion for the young man that took my son's life. I forgave him, and I started a foundation which is named after Tariq, called the Azim Khamisa Foundation, to teach nonviolence. And Tariq was the one that inspired me to do this. That was the gift that he gave me, even though he made the ultimate sacrifice. And I started with a simple premise that violence is a learned behavior. No child is born violent. Tony, who took his life, wasn't born violent. And if you accept that as an axiom, then nonviolence can also be a learned behavior, but you have to teach it. So for the last 30 years, I've been teaching nonviolence, accountability, empathy, compassion, forgiveness, and peace building. I've reached over 2 million kids and many, many more millions through my books and my talks and my media interviews. So my path to peace, the portal was forgiveness. My first book was From Murder to Forgiveness. My sequel was From Forgiveness to Fulfillment, because having talked to so many young people, it's been a very fulfilling journey. And my trilogy was From Fulfillment to Peace. And Tony wrote the foreword to it. I met him when he was 19 years old, 5 years after the tragedy, stayed with him for 20 years, advocating for his release. Finally, in 2019, I was at the parole board. Even the commissioner was in tears. He says, I've never had the victim's father advocate for the offender's release. I said, he's got work to do, not behind bars. He can work at the foundation, so release him. You know what? He won release in 2019. And now he's full-time on the foundation's staff, and very, very passionate and very competent in making sure other young people don't follow in his former footsteps. So I'm very proud of him. I know we've saved him, but he's saving thousands and thousands of other kids through the foundation's work. I think that speaks loudly on the power of forgiveness. And I attribute this work to Tariq with deep gratitude for putting me on my spiritual path. Know you are loved, my son. Know you continue to live in my heart. With deep gratitude. Thank you. Amen.
Thank you.
Quite a journey.
Indeed. I might be emotional.
Yes.
I'm a dad too, and I think the title of this podcast, Be Thyself. You know, you are that person. You know, there's no one that I can think of that actually embodying, you know, being thyself as much as you, Azim. You know, it's a great honor, and also a great honor to have you on the Be Thyself podcast.
Thank you, Serge.
Thank
It's
you,
good
Azim.
to see you, and thank you
good to
for
see you
having
again.
me.
Yes, we have. We've known each other for, I believe, 18 years now, on and off. You know, and it's an interesting story how actually you came up on this podcast today, because about 3 months ago, I was here with my friend and editor Dylan doing some videos, and I was like, you know what, I had just like an inside call you. It's just like, you know, I need to call Azim. I pick up the phone, and I call you, and you pick up right away.
Right.
And then I told you about the podcast, and you said, yes, I would love to come. It was meant to be, and I think, you know, this podcast is really kind of the beginning of my journey in terms of, you know, doing this. I've started many years ago, of course, but you have started your mission through an event that was dramatic, but that event gave you purpose and gave you a sense of mission that you actually kind of, you know, brought up to the world. And by creating that foundation, by this name, Tariq Khamisa Foundation, you are now impacting millions of people, young people and even older people, to actually kind of live a more peaceful life through forgiveness, through alignment, and being thyself. I want to kind of go back before the event to kind of get to know who you were then, because you're still the same person, but something has happened, obviously. I wanted to kind of get to know you prior to the event. I know you were born in Kenya, and you grew up, you know, as in a Sufi and Muslim tradition. I want to hear your story about the beginning and up to the point where this event happened. If you'd like to share that with us.
Yeah, I was born in Kenya. My roots are Persian and Indian. My grandfather emigrated that in 1906 when the British owned 2/3 of the world. And there wasn't much opportunity in India at that time, so that was a good call. My father was born there, I was born there, and I have a daughter that actually runs the Tariq Khamisa Foundation. She's the CEO, who was born there. Tariq was born here. And we left in 1974 to escape the violence of Idi Amin in neighboring Uganda. I'm sure most of you know that story, because as a minority we were targeted. And since I was educated in England, it was my job as the eldest son in my family to find a new home. So I moved to the United States through Canada in 1974 and have been here now for 52 years. And it took me 2 years to get everybody out from my family from Kenya. My parents have passed on. May the good Lord rest their souls in eternal peace. And what's ironic about this story is I left Kenya to escape the violence of Idi Amin, and what took my son's life was the violence in the United States. And my knee-jerk reaction was I made a big mistake, that I should leave America and maybe move to England, where I was a student. But I'd been here for 20 years because Tariq was born here and he died at 20. In fact, 6 weeks before his 21st birthday, where we had big plans. 21 is a big birthday. But I realized that my love for America was stronger than my anger, because there is a lot of good in America. We are democratic, we are a free market, although that's another conversation with what's going on today.
For sure.
Because I've never seen the country so polarized in the 52 years I've been here. But overall, I still believe that America has a lot to offer. But when it comes to violence, we are a very poor role model. Because I didn't know this. I worked in international finance. I speak a half a dozen languages. And I traveled the world. I had no idea that there were gangs. Tony joined the gang at the age of 11 in 6th grade. And it took my son's life in 8th grade at 14. We lose a young person in America every waking hour of every single day. In the richest nation in the world. Now, that didn't make sense to me. We can spend billions, and now the numbers are more like trillions, on wars on foreign soil. And yet, our innocent young people are murdered every single day in our own backyards. It's not about money. We have plenty of money. It's about the political will to address it. And that didn't make a lot of sense to me. Of course, now I'm an expert on youth violence. In fact, I've been invited to a national task force in Dallas that I leave on Monday with 50 other nonprofit organizations which are not being supported, although they're doing amazing work.
How do you think, the amount of violence has been portrayed in movies and games? I mean, do you think this has a big impact on the way kids are kind of viewing the world and also viewing violence? And do you think that has also kind of an impact on it as well?
Yeah, I think a lot of it has impact on it. That's one of them. But sometimes they're fighting over territory that they don't even own. Sometimes it's because they live in areas in our inner cities where they are radicalized, that this is the only way they can go through life. Of course, all of this violence we see on media reinforces some of that. And I believe that there is no single cause. Tony was born to a 15-year-old. It's a child raising a child. Child pregnancies. You also have the traditions that are probably handed down over several generations. Although we have program now for parents and teachers, we've been more successful in shifting kids because they are malleable, they are open, they want to learn, especially with the age that we work with.
Do you think that, kids are wired to actually kind of, to actually go towards peace and love and harmony more than violence?
I think so. And I think that the trend is getting stronger.
Yeah, the trend. I like that word because I think, violence is a trend. And I think now, going into peace and harmony and forgiveness and alignment, is to me the next trend. And I think that's probably the best one to follow.
So if you look at the 60s, which is 60 years ago, it was free love and flower power. And it was, I grew up in that area. And it was almost too liberal. Mm-hmm. So then we went the other way to then look at more structure. And now we've gone way to the right. Yes. But in every period, the new 60 years is we essentially improve on the last 60 years. Because evolution doesn't happen linearly. It happens in waves. Yes. So now I see that there is a reverse, like you just mentioned, that there is more leaning towards spirituality, the quintessential concepts of empathy, compassion, forgiveness, kindness.
Prior to the event, going back a little bit, did you already had kind of a sense of a mission, or you felt like, it's something, maybe as a kid even, that you felt like something that you felt like you're going to have to do in this lifetime?
No, I was an investment banker, obviously I had a strong spiritual foundation. As my good friend says, that character is not built through adversity. Character is revealed through adversity.
Yes.
So I had a good life. I traveled the world, stayed at 5-star restaurants, had a good social life. And if Tariq had been alive, probably would be doing that. So it was after the event. First of all, I was a basket case after Tariq died. It literally took all of my willpower just to get out of bed.
I want to actually kind of talk about the process as well, because, that event was, there's nothing worse that could ever happen to a parent, to lose a child.
Right.
There's nothing worse I can think of.
I agree.
So you went through that. And that, as you said, that has revealed your soul. Did you find that mission in that challenge?
Yes. And I couldn't even say Tariq died. In my Sufi tradition, there's a 40-day grieving period. During these 40 days, you're not supposed to cook or clean house. You're just supposed to grieve. And I had to tell the story. And Tariq died in such complex circumstances. And they wanted to know all the details. And I couldn't even say Tariq died, because it was like sending a 2,000 volt through my body. But they would wait. But I had to tell this story, which was very, very, very painful. It was like taking the scab off the wound. And my parents lived in Vancouver, Canada, where my mosque is. So we took Tariq's body over there because my father had an 11-hour surgery. They did 7 bypasses, so he could not have traveled. So Tariq is buried.
The same day? The same period of time?
Thursday.
Okay.
Tariq died on Saturday. And he didn't even know.
Wow.
Because the funeral was the Thursday after that. Because in the Muslim faith, we bury quickly. Yeah. And I couldn't even go see my father because he would have known something isn't right.
Yes.
And I still don't know how my mother, who knew, visited my dad. From that Saturday, we told him on Wednesday, which was the day before, how did she go through it without showing the emotion?
Yes.
And my sister, who passed away, elder sister, then broke the news to my father after they sedate him pretty heavy. And after they told him what had happened, after what she told him, before he was put into sleep, the Tariq died to give him a new lease on life. And then told him, you can't go to the funeral. He says, I have to go. We'll give you 1 hour. Well, the 1,400 people showed up. It took almost 6 hours, and he stayed the whole time.
There's a specific, practice that you do, and I want to talk about that because I didn't know about it until I kind of learned about,
Right.
Tariq's body was, in a white cloth.
Right.
Piece of cloth. And you actually kind of lay down his body yourself.
Right. Yeah, so what happens is at the funeral,
Yes.
there are prayers, and then everybody goes around in a single file around the body. Tariq is wrapped, he's on a gurney or a litter. He's covered with a white unstitched cloth. All you see is his face. And there is this chant that we do while everybody is going around the body in a single file. It took 2 hours for 1,400 people to do and pay their final respects. And we chanted this particular chant called Allahumma salli ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. It's a chant that you use during adversity. Now think about it. 1,400 people singing in unison for 2 hours.
Wow.
It changes your consciousness. And then as I took the gurney, I had the gurney, one pole on my right shoulder, one on my left. My brother was in the back, and my nephews were on the side. And as we moved through the funeral hall to the hearse that was outside, everybody there put their hand on the gurney like, we are helping you carry your weight. And then we get to the grave, and I had to step into the grave and accept my son's body. And my thought was bury me with him. I didn't want to leave him there alone. And then my best friend was with me, and he pulled me out of the grave. And then I had to take the first spade of dirt and cover Tariq's body, because we bury dust to dust. But then later I look at all of those rituals as how I go through those early days. Because there's no denial that he's dead. That's part of the ritual. I met a man who said, Azim, I don't know how you do this. I lost my son 25 years ago, and I still can't talk about it. Still in denial, because it's very painful, as you pointed out.
Yes.
But the main shift in my journey, to go back to your original question as to what shifted me, happened 4 months later. After the 40 days, after you go through this ritual about telling the story every hour, and prayers and all of that, the biggest, of course, your prayers at funeral tend every day, but the 40-day prayer essentially ends the grieving process. So my spiritual teacher, we don't call them rabbis, but they are essentially spiritual teachers. We call them dais in the Sufi tradition. His name is, by the way, Azim as well, and he was very helpful to me. And on the 40-day prayer, which were done in Vancouver, where Tariq is buried, we had dinner at my parents' house, and Azim was there, and he said, Azim, according to our tradition, this ends the grieving period. Because in our tradition, the fact that you grieve for 40 days is because Tariq's spirit is in close proximity of family and friends. But after 40 days, his spirit moves to a different consciousness, because we believe there's a journey after you die.
Yes.
Excessive grieving by family members and friends will impede his soul's journey in the next world.
Yeah.
And he says, I know 40 days is not a very long time, but my advice to you is, instead of grieving, do good, compassionate deeds in Tariq's name, because that will provide high-octane spiritual currency for him in the next world. Brilliant. We don't teach this in...
No. Pretty powerful.
So 4 months later, which would have been April, a good friend of mine has a condo in Mammoth, and he gave me the key. He said, Azim, spend as much time as you want. I spent like a week at this condo by myself, and I ate out the first day, and then I just bought groceries. And I had candles and had a nice fireplace, and I read and I journaled, and I walked every day. Beautiful in the mountains. And this thing kept playing in my head as a broken record. The good deeds done in the name of the departed are spiritual currency and provide high-octane fuel in Tariq's journey. So that's when I thought, what if I became the enemy, not of the kid who killed my son, but of the peer pressures, societal peer pressure that forced many young people, like Tony, to either die or end up in prison or whatever. That's the real enemy. And that's when I thought, we will call the foundation Tariq Khamisa Foundation, and we'll do good deeds in Tariq's name. So we'll create billions of dollars of spiritual currency so he can finish his life in a rocket.
That's beautiful.
So that gave me purpose, was really a question. Yes. It was a win for Tariq.
Yes.
It was a win for me.
Yes.
Because I came down the mountain stronger.
Yes.
And it was a win for society because it still wakes me up, especially when I talk to kids. I always say when I talk to kids, Tariq, I speak with Tariq, are you ready? Because you're creating spiritual currency for him. Obviously, you want to do something for your child. And my spiritual teacher gave me a medium of how I can create something. Because how do you create something for somebody who's not here anymore? Well, he showed me how.
Yes.
So that, I think, was where my shift started.
The mission came up out of...
Yeah, the mission came up.
Yep.
And it's been an amazing mission.
I have a question for you. Do you think that, we choose our circumstances, our parents, prior to this lifetime on a soul level?
Yes. Well, that's another good question because one of the things that I learned from His Holiness the Dalai Lama about past lives, but it wasn't so much about past life, it was a different question because he was with us for 15 hours. I've seen him, 5-6 times after that. But that was the first time I met, 2004. And one of the things he said that everything that happens to you, you attract for your spiritual evolution. I think you can relate to your story.
Absolutely.
Because that's what you shared with me on the drive here.
Yes.
So everything that happens to you, you attract. I was having a hard time with that. So I asked His Holiness, I said, Your Holiness, I'm having a hard time with this. Did I really attract the murder of my son? No parent would ever do that. And he said, according to Buddhist tradition, it takes several lifetimes to achieve enlightenment. So that's coming back to your past life question. And in every lifetime, you have lessons to learn.
Yes.
And your lesson in this lifetime was forgiveness. And you had a contract with Tariq that he would be born to you in your family and that he would tragically die at the age of 20. Because God gave us free will.
Yes.
You still had to choose between forgiveness and revenge. And you made the right choice. So your next lifetime, you don't have to lose another son. So that felt good.
Yes.
So I haven't done life regression. I think it's complicated enough to figure out this life.
It does make sense to me. I always believe that, we make soul agreements. I think, on a soul level, you make those decisions. Do you think that a soul could voluntarily choose to live a very challenging life to actually help and teach others?
No, I think that's a good question. I think the choice is given to you.
Yes.
I just finished a course in Vedanta, which is the Hindu scriptures. There's a book called Self-Unfoldment, written by Swami Chinmaya, or Chinmaya Ananda. There are 400 missions around the world, and there's one in Poway, which is close to San Diego, where I live, which is started by a good friend of mine. He's teaching this class. We spent almost 18 months. We met every Thursday for 90 minutes. And Swamiji, Guru Chinmaya, took Vedanta, which is thousands and thousands of pages, and distilled it in this book, which is 250 pages. It's brilliant. And most religions end up there.
Yes.
It's about seva, or seva is a Sanskrit word for service.
So yes.
And it's all about, that's why we're here. We're here to serve.
Yes. I truly believe
And
that.
not only to serve, but to be selfless in service.
Yes.
And we'll talk about it. And in Vedanta, you are taught that A, you are here to serve. B, you have to have the humility. It's not you doing it. It's a spirit working through you, which I know you'll get
Absolutely.
that. 3, you must not have any profit as a result of your seva. You're doing it selflessly for no other agenda than to help the person you're serving or the community you're serving.
And to me, this is the most fulfilling part, because nothing else will fulfill you more than being thyself, being yourself, serving.
Right.
Basically fulfilling the agreement that you have made on a soul level.
Right, exactly.
And, to come back to Tariq, and you had that agreement right from the get-go.
Right.
And then, this situation, this event actually kind of revealed that fact,
Right.
that agreement. And then the foundation came and the mission. And so in some way, Tariq was a gift.
Right.
Tariq was basically a gift.
I say that. Is it a blessing or is it a travesty? It's
You have
probably
chosen.
both. Right.
And perhaps it's an agreement that you both have made
Right.
on a higher level, on a soul level, and that, this is not a tragedy. It could be looked as a tragedy, but also as a blessing in disguise, but also it's something that was meant to happen,
Right.
that you actually have decided on the soul level. And so by actually, I would feel that way if I had something like that happen to me in my life, that, we made that agreement, on the soul level.
Right.
It's nothing lost here.
Right.
It's just an agreement. It's a journey that we actually kind of, we're doing this together here, for the better. And it's such a gift.
Absolutely.
Such a gift.
It's a meaningful tragedy.
Yes.
In our mortal terms, it's still a tragedy
Yes.
because it's difficult, to just have him for 20 years. But a lot of good came out of it, as you pointed out. And we had this agreement at the soul, actually say at the cellular level.
Yes.
People ask me, so I teach a 2-day workshop on forgiveness. I do one in Hawaii every year, where I teach steps of how you forgive people that have harmed you, and steps of how you forgive others that have harmed you, and how you forgive yourself, because at some level we've all harmed.
Yes.
Based on my journey, I teach both of these areas. I teach this based on the fact that in every tragedy, you have to look for the spiritual bullion.
Yes.
That's a spiritual part.
Yes.
It's everything that happens to you attract. Why do you attract it? Because we all have a spiritual path.
For sure.
But we don't know what that is sometimes. Not for me. Tariq put me on my spiritual mission, which is what you were talking about.
Yes.
But that was the gift.
Yes.
And we all have it. But what happens in your life, right? The Spirit is always nudging you
Yes.
towards your spiritual purpose. And you are a good example of that. So the point is that when you do find your spiritual purpose, and that was a gift that came out of Tariq's tragedy, you have a tailwind all the way, and the road rises to meet you because the universe supports it.
Absolutely.
And when you have the universe supporting your mission, everything is possible. I mean, I look at everything that's manifested in my life in the last 30 years. It's way beyond my wildest imaginations. I would never have thought that. But because I found that spiritual mission. So I think that is one of the, when something tragic happens to you, you don't say, why me? It's a victim mentality.
Yes.
I recognize that there's no quality of life being a victim. I had a full life when Tariq was alive. I have a full life today. This one actually is better because financial services was about money. This is about saving lives of children and youth.
Yes.
Far more fulfilling, far more important.
Yes.
Right? And again, it goes back to seva. So in Vedanta,
Yes.
I already gave you the first three. The fourth is you have to be accepting, which I think is another powerful concept, of the outcome. Because you can be very passionate about creating an outcome. If you get a different outcome, that's something else I learned from His Holiness the Dalai Lama. That you have to have the faith to understand that the outcome you actually got was better for you than the one you wanted.
sometimes we hope or we wish for
Yeah.
things, and then and we actually kind of so attached to the outcome
Right.
that we actually kind of forget that what, it's in God's hands, or whatever name you want to call it.
Right.
And just follow your path, be thyself, follow your
Right.
your excitement, to follow like your heart,
Right.
and things will be taken care of. You don't have to think about
Right.
how it's gonna go, how it's gonna happen.
Right.
And I think just by being on that path, and and being yourself, and
Right.
and following your heart,
Right.
truly your soul, everything comes the way it's supposed to, and you don't have to worry about those things.
And be accepting of the
Yes,
outcome.
absolutely.
Because God works in mysterious ways.
Yep.
We all know that.
Of course, yes. So we talk about basically going through challenge in life, and those challenges can reveal the soul. I want to ask you a question. What is destiny to you?
Right. I think that destiny for me is achieving total selflessness and being realized, self-realized. I'm not sure where I am on that journey. I mean, if you look at, there's a book by Sri Yukteswar, who was the guru for Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
It may take up to 1,000 lifetimes to achieve self-realization. Most of us are probably well along the way, but we don't know exactly where we are. But one of the things I learned from Vedanta is all the good work that you do in this lifetime, even though you do not achieve self-realization, because it's a hard one to achieve, you bring it with you in the next lifetime. And earlier on, we were talking about this idea of free will and previous lives.
Yes.
And in Vedanta, I learned that sometimes you agree to a difficult life because it is part of your lesson to move towards self-realization. So in my Sufi tradition, the goal is to be totally egoless, because ego is what stops you from being self-realized. And there are 7 steps of how to get there. And this knowledge comes from Rumi, who was a Sufi, and I grew up as a Sufi. And when a child is born, if it needs anything, it just starts to cry. And you grow up with that. Everything is all about me, 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 me. And then as you meet people like yourselves, or somebody that is on a spiritual path, you realize that being me, 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 me is now going to lead you to happiness and self-realization. So if anything bad happens to you, typically in that stage, you blame somebody else. Which is very true with the gang culture, by the way.
Because you associate yourself with the ego.
Yeah, because they
You
blame
identify
somebody
yourself.
else. Yeah,
Yes,
but,
and then, of course,
but then you become evolved, and then you realize that, no, it's not anybody else's fault, it's my fault, which is a big step. Well, it's a good movement towards being egoless, but life still is not working very well. So then you meet somebody else who is on a spiritual path, and you surrender. AA is a good example of it.
yes.
And life starts to work better, because now you found spirit, you found God, and you recognize that you surrender to the idea that God has the best for you, loves you, and wants you to be self-realized, and will help you on your journey to find your destiny, to become self-realized.
And I believe that God loves you so much, or whatever name, I'm just using God as an example. but
Higher power, whatever.
higher power, all that is, actually loves you so much. I truly believe that He gives you free will.
Right.
Because, He doesn't want to force you in any way, any shape, form. He just wants you to do what you want to do.
Right.
And I believe that's a bit of what I would say from destiny is. I'm using the analogy of walking in a hallway.
Right.
You're gonna have to walk the hallway. That's your destiny. That's your life. There's no chance. I mean, you can go around that.
Right.
But the way you're actually kind of doing it, you can run, you can, crawl, you can, jump, you can walk, you can be happy. That's free will. You have the
Right.
choice the choice to actually kind of live that life the way you really want it.
Right, exactly.
But the life, you're going to have to live it.
Right,
But
exactly.
the free will, it would be like, the way you're going to do it. And it's your choices, You're going to choose either to be happy
Right.
or depressed.
Right.
Those are choices.
Right.
It's not something that's put upon yourself.
Right.
It's something you decide.
Right. It's a choice.
It's a choice.
Choice, yeah.
So you had the choice
yeah.
to actually see this event
Right.
as being like, the end or the beginning of something. And you have
Right.
chosen to actually see it as a beginning of a big thing that actually is helping millions of people now
Right.
because of that event that happened.
So going back to the 7 steps.
Yes, please.
That was another part that when you get to surrender, life starts. A lot of people get stuck there. There are 4 other parts to get self-realization. But then, because life is working for you, ego kicks back in, and you are very pleased with yourself. Because now your work life is working better than people maybe around you. So that's the 4th step, is that ego's kicked back in because now you're pleased. So that's step number 5, when you start to really get that life is all about service, not about you. Now you're leaving your ego, and your entire life is devoted to helping others. And then the 6th step is you become a lantern, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Thich Nhat Hanh. He passed away. I knew him as well, and some of the gurus you mentioned. And eventually that leads you to step number 7, and you become an insan, perfect insan, or fully self-realized. And Rumi says in every century, very few people actually get there. And if they do get there, they will never tell you because it takes ego.
I love it. That's so true.
So, that's the Sufi way. So my destiny, I believe, is eventually to become self-realized. And I don't know where I am on the ladder. Because another thing that I've learned is that that level of peace, connection, and self-realization is not necessary that it comes to you from working. Obviously, knowledge and practice is important. It's also grace. It's a gift from a higher power. And I know that grace exists because forgiveness in itself is a blessing, and I teach this. What is a blessing is when preparation meets grace. At the end of the day, forgiveness is a gift from a higher power. You can do all the preparation, but you can't get there without grace. And I know grace exists because it has existed in my life in a powerful way. And I have that faith that grace, when I'm ready, will bless me with my journey. Maybe it's step 5 or 4 or 3 or 2. Sometimes you can be on this journey of the 7 steps and then you swing back to step number 1. It's not linear.
Yes, sir.
It happens in waves. But I believe that with continuing spiritual evolution, which is doing service without any profit in mind, accepting of the results, knowing to have the humility, it's the Spirit working through you, right? That you continue to progress on the spiritual path. I think at the end, everybody's destiny is to become self-realized, to be one with the universe.
Yes, truly believe that. What is forgiveness for you?
People ask me, how do I know that I have forgiven? And the answer to that is when that person has a safe passage through your mind. When I think of Tony, my blood pressure doesn't go up.
Yes.
Because I've created a lot of love for him. He has a safe passage through my mind. In fact, I have created such love for him that I know that I have changed him. And if you only save one human being, in the Quran it says, you will save the entire humanity. And if you take a life of a one innocent human being, you take the life of all of humanity. So forgiveness is about you more than the offender. You have to separate it out. As I said earlier, if you stay in anger and resentment and hatred, who are you hurting?
Yourself.
Yourself. one of Mandela's good quotes is, unforgiveness is like drinking poison and waiting for your enemy to die.
Yeah.
Kills you.
Yes.
But the more important part of forgiveness is that I didn't want to go through life as a victim. I didn't want to go through life on crutches. I had a full life. When Tariq was alive, I wanted that full life back. I have that full life back. So I think the important piece here is that you have to understand that forgiveness is a gift that you give to yourself. The fact that it can help the other person is really the icing on the cake. So I think that is something that people have a hard time getting to, because by me forgiving Tony, it's like I'm condoning his behavior. In my case, it worked. But Tony probably could have been the other way. He stayed in that bravado for the first 2.5 years, blaming everybody else. But I started the foundation 9 months, reached out to his grandfather. And I believe my forgiveness had shifted him. Because when I met him at 19, it took me 5 years, because it's very hard to come eyeball to eyeball with the person who took your son's life. But I understood that at some point, for me to complete my journey, I had to come eyeball to eyeball with Tony. So I love his grandfather. We are like brothers. And when we met for the first time, he was 19. And I had some tough questions for him, because he was the last person to see Tariq. But the seminal moment in that meeting was we locked eyeballs. I'm looking in his eyes and he's looking in my eyes. And we held that glance for an uncomfortable time. And I'm looking in his eyes trying to find a murderer, and I didn't. I was able to climb through his eyes and touch his humanity, that I got the spark in him was no different than the spark in you or anybody else who's listening to this and me. He was well behaved, he was articulate, he was remorseful, he was intelligent. He did not have any bravado of a 19-year-old in our society. He didn't show any of this attitude, especially of a gang member. What I'm trying to tell you, he was a likable kid. I wasn't expecting that. And I could tell that my hand of forgiveness over those 5 years had transformed him to be the person that he is today. So I believe that this is a hypothesis, that if you forgive with no strings attached, it will shift the other person. Maybe not in the timeline you want, in God's timeline.
Yes.
Because that energy is what the universe supports. And it will shift the other person. And I've seen many examples of that. In one of my workshops in St. Paul, Minnesota, forgiveness workshop, there was a nice Jewish lady. It was a 2-day workshop. On the morning of the second day, she's very animated. She says, Azim, you don't get it. And I said, well, what is it that I don't get? I'm working on forgiving Hitler. Pretty powerful. Her family, ancestry, were killed in the Holocaust. You could feel her hatred. Very, very dark. Her entire face was etched, and I could see that she was in a very negative space. So I told her, I said, you know what? Let me share something with you. The higher power knows how to deal with Hitler better than you do or I do. And as we speak, no, the higher power is dealing with Hitler, because there's no escaping wrongdoing. Karma always balances. Why do you want Hitler to live in this important, meager real estate of your psyche? Why not release Hitler so love and joy can live there? It's like we were talking about. It's a choice. Knowing that the higher power is dealing with it. And the light bulb went on. Hitler died 80 years ago. This workshop probably was 5 years ago. How's it working for you? So even by the end of the second day, I could see her aura shifting. Her entire energy was moving from a negative to a more positive outlook, knowing that her hatred to Hitler was hurting her more than Hitler. You have to separate yourself from the offender. That's the kind of point, that she was starting to do that, knowing that it wasn't her responsibility, because her responsibility is her own life. And by the end of the day, you could see a different person in her with lines fading. I don't know how many hugs she gave me, thanking me for the workshop. Then a month later, I get the beautiful card from her. And there was a P.S. that she actually created this card, worked, in crafts. And it was a beautiful, I mean, I get all the letters and cards, but this was really very nicely done. And the P.S. was, "My husband thanks you."
But for sure.
We've been married for 25 years, and we now have the most loving marriage because Hitler doesn't live here.
I wanted to ask this because, as you said, sometimes the ego comes back in,
Right.
and then so is like forgiveness a single decision or something you had to choose over and over and over again?
Yeah, I think it's a practice,
It's a practice. Yeah, I would think so too as well.
like peeling an onion. As I say, sometimes I joke that if somebody crosses me on the freeway, I don't throw the finger, I bless them. One of my team members, she does my social media and edits my monthly newsletters, always says, "I have a little Azim on my shoulder." If somebody upsets me, I would say, "What is Azim going to do here?"
Yeah.
Because, when I wrote my first book, there wasn't much on forgiveness. You almost had to go back to the scriptures. But today, there is a forgiveness project at Stanford run by Fred Luskin, who is a good friend of mine. There's a forgiveness project in Hawaii run by Roger Epstein, who is another good friend of mine. There's a forgiveness project in London run by Marina Cantacuzino, who's a journalist. And there is at least 500 clinical studies that have shown that forgiveness is good for your health, is good for you to foster peace, and it is good for your relationships.
For sure.
We all have relationships with our spouses, our children, our friends. And then when you're forgiving, when you lose a child, and many have lost children, most couples divorce. And only they divorce, they leave town. They lose their friends because the friends don't know how to help them.
Yeah.
You can't really help them because, it's a self-journey.
Yes.
I never left town. Most of my friends are more friends because of how I reacted. And my relationships are more stronger. My daughter is very much on the same path now. She joined me 3 years after I joined the foundation. Then she left. And then she got married. I have 3 beautiful grandchildren. And then she came back and she's now runs the foundation. And she's very passionate about it. And Tony and her are like siblings. We all want health, happiness, and strong relationships. This is why I say, if people knew the benefits of forgiveness, they would run to it.
There's like a component to forgiveness. It's to let go, let God.
Right.
You let go of the wrongdoing.
Right.
There's no judgment there.
Right.
You have to let go of that part
Right,
to
right.
actually kind of go to the next step, which is
Yeah,
forgiveness.
that's actually what the Dalai Lama said, what you just said. That the biggest impediment to forgiveness is judgment.
Yeah.
And we are very judging people based on all the isms,
Yes.
color, race, socioeconomic status. It's a big call to forgive the person who killed your child. I get that. But I was able to do it. I'm not any saint. I'm just a working person like you or Mother there. But the one thing that is not such a big call is don't judge. Leave judgment to the higher power.
Yes.
The scriptures tell you that. Nobody is perfect. We are all fallible. So have the empathy that if you don't agree with somebody or they have an opposing view, don't judge.
Because we all have the ability to, to be the best or the worst of ourselves, so to
Right.
speak, or to play out, the best part of ourselves or the worst. And I truly believe that for myself, when, I feel compelled to make a judgment, which doesn't really happen, but I feel like, I'm judging myself.
Right,
It's something that I have within myself that I didn't accept.
right,
Sometimes we do horrific things. Sometimes we do, and we have to live with that. We have to accept that we're on a learning path,
right,
a journey that's actually bigger than just ourselves.
right.
And I think we all play a role in that journey. Like it's like a tapestry, and we're all woven together in this.
Right. And I think that the short answer to what you just said is empathy. When you build your empathy muscle, you don't judge. Because you then are walking in the shoe of the other person. We teach this to the kids, that empathy is about listening to somebody with their ears feeling with somebody with their heart and walking with somebody in their shoes. And I'll give you an example of that. We were teaching, because the precursor to forgiveness is compassion. The precursor to compassion is empathy. The precursor to empathy is to know the person. I know everything that there is to know about Tony. You can't have empathy for somebody you don't know. So we teach this lesson about empathy, and this is again in the middle school. And my daughter actually was teaching this. This is a few years ago. And the homework is, go walk a mile in somebody's shoes you don't know. Because you can't have empathy for somebody you don't know. Typically, if they're not like you or have an opposing view, you judge them. But no, to go walk a mile on his shoes. So this one kid, his name is Alejandro, Spanish kid, but he goes by Alex, the most disruptive kid in the class. And a wannabe gang member, the way he walked, the way he dressed, the way he signaled. So when the next class after empathy is on compassion. But before the class, my daughter asked, who wants to share their homework on empathy? Because the homework was, you go walk a mile in somebody's shoes you don't know. And of course, he shut up. Alex was very animated. He wanted to speak, and she's trying to avoid him. Because he's the most disruptive kid in the class. And she's thinking, he's going to ruin my class. But she couldn't avoid him. He was determined to speak. And he didn't ruin the class. He actually made the class. What he said, I was walking in the hood, which is inner city hood, last weekend, and this kid gave me a dirty, angry look. And the rules of the hood are, if somebody gives you angry, dirty look, you go beat him up. But because you taught me that you don't know me till you walk in my shoes, and I don't know you till I walk in your shoes, I walked up to him and said, why are you giving me a dirty, angry look? What the kid said? The kid says, I'm not giving you a dirty, angry look. I'm angry because my brother was shot and killed in this spot last night. What did you do? I reached out to him. I put my hand on his shoulders and I told him, I know exactly how you feel. My favorite uncle was shot in the same spot 6 months ago. That's empathy. You see the power in this. One lesson. You tell me you can't teach this stuff.
Nope.
What could have been a fight became a compassionate action. And I think that is something that is important to take, because you are walking in somebody else's shoes. Nobody is perfect, including you. So when you have something that looks like you should judge, you should go the other way and build the empathy and do what Alex did and reach out. And I always say, don't only reach out with love and compassion, because love always wins.
Yes.
Always. That's a good question to ask. What would love do in a situation like this? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that we have to shift and understand. I teach this to the kids too, that if you have an important decision to make, right? Because in life you're going to get problems your intellect will not solve. In life you're going to get problems your hearts are not going to heal. Then where are you? But there are no problems, and I underscore that there are no problems that you're going to get in your life that your spirit cannot solve or heal. But we don't live in our spirit. We live in our heads. And I did too, I must say, when I was in my financial services business.
That's the main difference nowadays. You're living in your heart.
Yeah, or in my spirit.
And your spirit.
Because I teach the kids that if you have an important decision, you go to your intellect first, you go to your head, and you ask the question, does it make sense, does it not make sense? Because it's essentially an analytical tool.
Yeah.
Sure, it does imagination, but it's like a computer, pros and cons. I said, and that's good. The more education you get, the better you are able to analyze. So nothing wrong with a PhD. But if it makes sense, you go to your heart and you ask, does it feel good, right, and just? Because we all have a sense of what is good, right, and just. We were born with it. Don't stop there. We've all done things, especially in our teenager years, that really make sense and that really feels good, right, and just. And then later said, why did I do that? To take the third step and go to your spirit and say, is it inspiring? Will others follow my lead? And if I don't get a check in all of those three boxes, head, heart, and spirit, I don't move forward. And I learned that the spirit is much stronger, is what helped me make the kind of decisions I made in Tariq's tragedy. Much stronger than intellect and emotion. And if it can help me deal with Tariq the way I did, why don't I bring my spirit into everything I do? So I always now lead from my spirit.
It's a good point. I always feel like the spirit connects straight to the heart and the heart goes to the head. Because a lot of people think, it's the other way around.
Right.
You get ideas in your head, but before they come into your head, they're coming from spirit.
Right.
Then they go to your heart, which is another filter, and go straight to the head, which is the biggest filter with the belief system.
That's well said.
And I think, a lot of time without those things, without, the information we're getting from the spirit in our heart.
Right.
And I always feel like the heart is not mushy. It's not, it's holistic. It takes everything into account. I really truly believe that because we know nowadays that, the heart think.
Right.
Science knows that. It's sending signal to the brain and so on and so forth. So your journey, going through, your the challenge that you went through and actually kind of help you to be who you are and to function from your spirit, from your divine self. And you are in touch with it. You are communicating with it.
Right.
And, I have, lost a dad, many, many years ago and, we weren't too close, but, I have seen him after his passing, like really kind of feeling and get some information downloaded to me. I wanted to ask you if you actually have those moments where you hear Tariq.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very much in communications with Tariq.
Do you think he's guiding you? Do you
yeah.
think he's guiding you sometime in the choice you make?
Yeah, we talk all the time because I live in pretty much by myself. I do have a relationship, but she's normally there on the weekends. So if I'm eating at home alone, I light a candle when I'm home anyway, and have some flowers, and I put his photo on one of my favorite photos of him on the dining room table, and we have a conversation. Mostly I tell him what's going on with the foundation. He probably knows anyway, but I tell him anyway. Makes me feel good. And he'll respond. I am very connected to him because I always feel his presence. At some level, we are all channelers. I serve as the vice chair of the Institute of Noetic Sciences, which was started by Edgar Mitchell. Mm-hmm. He was the sixth man to walk on the moon. And Ions is 52 years old because most astronauts are atheists because they're scientists.
Yes.
And scientists are trained to have proof, and there's no proof that God exists. But he had an epiphany. It's called the overview effect. You can actually Google that. Mm-hmm. Where he was at the window seat and gets into the rotisserie when the spacecraft enters into the Earth's atmosphere. Mm-hmm. So he would see the sun, the moon, and the beautiful planet that we live in, the blue Earth. You've seen the images.
Yep.
And he saw that everything is connected. And the outer space is the same thing as the inner space. But we don't know much about consciousness. And it shifted his consciousness. So at Ions we teach, we research consciousness with 6 scientists that study metaphysical concepts, like distant healing, like remote viewing. I mean, I'm a big meditator. I do 2 hours. We study meditation. We study channeling. And we all have these abilities.
Yeah.
But we're not using them.
I believe so, absolutely.
Your intuition is your 6th sense. And that is how spirit speaks to you. We rely on our 5 senses. But the intuition is probably the most powerful because that's spirit.
Yes.
And when you connect to that, it actually improves your other 5 senses. So I very much pay attention to the messages I get in my meditation. I've written 5 books. They've all been downloads. Because spirit is continuously guiding you to find your life's purpose.
I truly believe that.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty much. Sometimes we're not always listening,
right?
But it's there. You just need to be open and listen to it.
Right.
And I truly believe that when you have the knowing of what you need to do,
right,
based on the agreement that you made prior to being on this earth, if you don't listen, that's that's not too wise, because that's when, you're creating resistance.
Right.
And I think once, you open yourself up to the agreement that's been made and go with it and follow the path that you are here for, as you were saying earlier, things open up and you are being supported in the process.
Right.
And I always say to people actually kind of worried about not being supported financially or any other way, by doing what they love, by following their calling, their mission, what they're here for. I just say to them, you know what? This earth is functioning on its own. Look at this. Everything is in alignment and functioning perfect, being supported
Right.
all the time. It'll be the same for you if
Absolutely.
you actually kind of follow,
It's a divine order.
It's a divine order. And I think, this podcast is about that as well. It's to really kind of, inspire people, but also to let them know that, this is the way to go. This
Right.
is your path. Don't put it on the side.
Right.
Because, this is your life. Don't waste it. And I can truly say that, you're doing it.
Absolutely.
The embodiment of being thyself, of someone who's actually kind of walking the path, doing what, your soul has actually kind of planned ahead of time
Right.
before you even knew.
Absolutely. And I think that what you said makes exactly not a lot of sense, but also I believe that's the true wisdom. And wisdom comes from listening, not speaking. That's why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Good point.
People are not good listeners. When you are in a conversation with somebody, before you even finish, they're already thinking about what they're going to say. Not listening. And that's the difference between wisdom and intellect. People that are wise don't do that. They listen with their heart, their ears, and their soul. They're not thinking, what am I going to respond to? Because listening is where empathy lives, love lives, better decision-making lives. Yeah?
Yes.
I don't think I was a very good listener when I was in financial services. Even Einstein says we must take care not to make intellect our God. Sure, it has powerful muscles but no personality. It cannot lead, it can only serve.
Yes.
So intellect is probably overrated.
If there's someone out there that's actually watching this podcast, that's actually going through, I would say, a similar situation than yours, what would be like the advice that you would give them in terms of forgiveness?
You have to shift that forgiveness is something for you. Do you want to go through life, anger, hatred, resentment? Those are things that cause cancer, terminal. Or do you want to go through life as a victim on crutches? And unless you forgive, you remain a victim. So you have to create that perspective of shifting and separating you from the offender, knowing karma always balances. Leave the offender to the higher power, because it's good for your health, it's good for your relationships, it's good for your peace, it's good for your happiness.
In practical way, what was the step that you went through in terms of your daily practice? What did you do to kind of, go through this?
I think that I meditate 3 different times a day,
Okay.
and I can send you a link. I have 2 guided meditation on my website. One is on manifesting your mission.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is on forgiveness, because I teach it. But I meditate 3 different times, but I do different things at those 3 different times. Because meditation is when you are in the samadhi state, where there is no thought or no mantra. Hard to get there. I've been meditating now for 50-some years. And I always get it, but I can't live in it. I'm trying to stay in it. So my practice in meditation is, at night, I empty my mind. I look at every thought as an apple in a basket. I remove the apple and put it on the table. I still see the apple, but I'm objective about it, not subjective about it. So I'm not thinking about the apple or my thought. I'm just looking and witnessing it, just like a chair in the room. And then I go to sleep. But what I find in that process, that some of these apples I took out creep back in, which is good information. So I keep a notebook on my bedside. I meditate sitting up in bed, and I write them down, because those are unresolved issues. I need to call my grandchildren, or I need to go see my daughter, or I need to take care of this in my foundation, whatever. Unresolved stuff will keep coming up. Those apples will repeat. So it's good information. Once you resolve it, then they don't show up. And then the Sufi bewitching hour is from 4 to 5. So that's when I meditate for an hour, because I want to get time in that samadhi state. And even the most accomplished meditators get seconds in there. It's hard to stay there. So I was fine. But I meditate for, sometimes I hit it in the first 10 minutes. Sometimes it takes half an hour. But I continue doing it because I'm a little greedy about getting into that samadhi state. And I sleep quite well after I empty the basket, because there's nothing more you've done between the time you empty the basket and you meditate. So you haven't added any new stuff. So more chances to find the samadhi state. And then I go back to sleep at 5, and then I get up around 7, 7:30, and then I look ahead my day. So today I know I was doing a podcast with you, and I wanted to ask the Spirit to help me create a podcast that can help people that are listening to it to transform and to heal, to speak to their souls. People ask me, how do you work? I say, I don't work at the emotional, because there's a lot of therapy, EBT, emotional behavior theory, or the intellect. I work much deeper. I work at the cellular level. So then I ask the Spirit to help me manifest what it is I'm going to work on. Often the Spirit will manifest, because I know that if I invite the Spirit, the right words will come out, the right actions will come out, the right intentions will come out.
Truly believe that. I believe that, want to actually let the Spirit work through you.
Right.
Being the vessel.
Right.
Letting it express itself through you, you're in the flow.
Absolutely.
That's what the flow is. Do you believe that forgiveness could actually change the world for the better?
I think it can create world peace.
Do you think the principles of forgiveness and your principles that you've been teaching for so long now could actually be applied to countries and people from different opinions and that are going through wars and that have been, through...
Right. Societal transformation is harder than individual. But societies are made with individuals. So you see this in some of the successful movements. But I think forgiveness starts with one person at a time. And I think that if you are authentic, be thyself, I think that message can spread. At least it has shown it for me, whether I work with kids or adults, that it does transform. I've spoken to football players and they come up to me and say, can I give you a hug? And I said, be careful, you're a pretty big guy. Don't break any ribs, He says, they tell me, you spoke directly to my soul. You bypassed my head and my heart, you spoke to my soul. So, it definitely is something that people want to espouse. And there isn't enough of us, but I think that podcasts like yours and all the speaking and the workshops I do is building that movement. And I truly believe that once we have enough people, then it will shift that particular country, that particular society, that particular organization. I've done this work in corporations where I teach the principles of restorative justice, where I tell them that if somebody makes a mistake, don't fire him. It's a learning experience. We're talking about it. Because you can learn not to make the same mistake again. We don't believe in second chance. We do in the foundation. We are 4% of the world's population. We have 25% of the world's prisoners. Kind of a crazy statistic. We don't give second chances. 3 strikes and you are out. Whereas I do work in prisons. I'm actually going next month to Milan, which is by Detroit. Mm-hmm. It's a federal prison. I work at Leavenworth, which is by Kansas City. And there's a program called Life Connection Program, which is run by the chaplain. Everybody that's going to be paroled can opt in to this particular program, and everyone has a spiritual teacher. The chaplain always says, once they hear you speak, they pay attention to the rest of the program. And they all have a spiritual guide. If you're a Muslim, you have an imam, you're a Christian, you have a minister, if you're Buddhist, you have a monk. If you're Jewish, you have a rabbi. They work with them. And the results of the LCP program, the Life Connection program, is huge. The recidivism rate in the adult system is 2/3. But if they go through the LCP, it drops to 17%.
That's a huge number.
Which means the other 83% are like Tony, out there doing good work.
Exactly. Love that. If you could make one universal law that would have to be like followed everywhere across the planet, which one would it be?
Wow. That's a good question. I've never been asked that question. And I've done a lot of interviews. For me, what has worked is forgiveness. It creates spaces. It doesn't change the event, but it helps to carry it better. And I believe that there are certain quintessential principles. Gravity is easy to understand because gravity, you can't fight gravity. And I believe the same thing is true with love and empathy and gratitude and compassion and forgiveness. These are all spiritual values that are like gravity. They are going to be with us till we learn them. So I think that this whole process is to get people to become more spiritually attuned, the word you were using earlier, to their spirits. And maybe that would be a good universal law. To say that you need to be totally in selfless service. Not by you. You're here to serve others. And to be able to be totally selfless, totally egoless, and dedicate your life to the service of others. And that would be a great universal law.
Well, you have to basically maybe dedicated time, every week, every month, every year, or whatever number it is, to maybe be part of a mission, or could be your mission as well, where you can actually go and actually kind of serve. The law would be like, once a year you have to do that.
Right.
Where you have to spend like 3 days or whatever time that, would be like, that's a nice law. I like that.
Yeah,
I love it.
Too, yeah. Thanks for the question, because nobody's ever asked me that question, but I think I'm getting more clarity.
Yeah, I can see that.
That, I think, would be a great universal law.
A lot of time in some countries, you kind of, obligated to go for the military service, right? Why don't we actually create like a law where we have to go serve or go through, and you can choose the mission, you can choose the organization you want to be working with,
right?
But you have to do that.
Right, exactly. In Tibet, which no longer exists, it was probably the most compassionate form of government the world has ever seen, because His Holiness was both the secular and the spiritual leader. And when he was ousted by the Chinese, this story is probably not very well known, but he shared that with us when I met him in 2004. There's only 6 million Tibetans and 1.4 million were killed. Over 640,000 monasteries were destroyed. And just like at one time, our young people went to military for 2 years, in the Tibetan tradition, they went to a monastery. That's why there were so many monasteries, to learn the Tibetan way of Buddhism. And the Dalai Lama was telling us a story about his best friend that he went to school with when he was a young man. And the Dalai Lama escaped and lives in exile, as you know, in Dharamsala. But his best friend was captured by the Chinese for 30 years. I don't have to tell you about Chinese torture. But because of his international reputation, the Dalai Lama was able to eventually get his friend released from prison. And he's telling this story, and he said his friend traveled through China to pay homage to their secular and spiritual leader. And he said, I was so happy to see him. We hugged and we had tea and our best cookies. And when I met him after 30 years, he told me that while he was in Chinese prison, being tortured for 30 years, he had this impending danger in his life. So I asked him, were you afraid the Chinese were going to kill you? And he said, no, I wasn't afraid of dying. The impending danger in my life was losing compassion for the Chinese. The impending danger in my life was losing compassion for the Chinese who killed 1.4 million of my brothers and sisters and destroyed 640,000 monasteries. And I sobbed like a child because there was only 30 of us. I was right next to His Holiness like I am sitting next to you. And I lost it because I got what this best friend was trying to tell him. If I lost compassion for Tony or his grandfather, what would I replace it with? It was the right choice. Because one of the things that I learned from His Holiness that every emotion has a vibration.
Yes.
Some emotions have a very high vibration. Some emotions have a very low vibration. Shame and guilt and anger and resentment and hatred and lying and cheating and greed and avarice. Happiness doesn't live there. Then you have some high vibratory emotions, friendship, goodwill, gratitude, empathy, compassion. Forgiveness is right there with love.
Yes, indeed.
Very high vibration. Happiness lives there. It's not complicated. At any given moment, even when you are somebody's listening to this podcast, where are you vibrating? Up here or down there? Now, when you meet His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he's up here 24/7. But us mortals all have a bad hair day, right? You get angry and you fall off the wagon. I do too. I'm working on it.
We all do.
But one thing I can tell you, having done this work, Serge, for 30 years, I'm spending more time here.
Yeah. That's the
I
beauty.
think you are too.
Yes.
And when you are doing and vibrating in these high vibratory emotions, you're more in the flow. You mentioned that earlier. You're happier. You're healthier. You're at peace. Every time that you fall off from a high vibratory emotions to a low vibratory, when that happens to me, I add another half an hour to my 2-hour meditation and I get back up here.
And it's also the best place to live your life, also to give.
Right.
And I think, being on that frequency, on that level of frequency is the best gift you can ever share with the world.
Right.
And that's how, I think the world can, basically vibrate from that level. It's basically in synchronicity.
I think that energy transforms.
Absolutely.
And it shifts.
I wanted to say this because I think it really kind of, to me, it kind of branch out also with forgiveness. If they had like a universal law, it's funny because it dawned to me very quickly when someone, I heard that, question. I was like, yeah, I know. And my answer to this was like, if we could put, let's say, any president or president to be or vice president or whatever together in the same house with the opposite party, live together, eat together, play together, work together for a month, 30 days, the world would be a different place because they would recognize that, we want the same thing. We're just going about to get those things in different ways.
Absolutely. It's the ability to walk in their shoes.
Yes.
And I think, as you pointed out so correctly, we all want the same thing. We go about it a different way. Yes. And that's true with other nationalities, other religions, other places. I've traveled a lot around the world. And I've learned a lot from people that not only may not be like me. In fact, I've learned more from people that are not like me than I have learned from people that are like me. And I said this earlier, and I think it might be worth underscoring, that one key message that I'd like to underscore again in this particular podcast is learn not to judge. Things start to shift.
Yes.
When you see the other person with their eyes, that there's the same spark in them as in you, that they are as fallible as you are, that they want the same things as you do. Yeah?
Yes.
And they deserve it. Love thy neighbor as thyself.
Yes. Absolutely.
Don't judge. Leave the judge to the higher power. And there would be a powerful shift in you. And I think your kids and your spouses and all your peers and your other relationship will pick up on them because you will not judge them anymore. And that, I think, is an important lesson that I have learned in my 30-year journey, that I don't judge.
Azim, this was a beautiful time.
I enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
It was
It's a very rich conversation.
Yes. So
I can't wait to look at it.
I'm so I feel really blessed and thankful and appreciative of you being here with me, with us, and the viewer and everybody else. I know that your life has actually, and your mission has actually helped millions of people, and more to come,
Right.
as this foundation will actually kind of move on even after we pass.
Right.
And I think, in and of Tariq as well, And so I wanted to thank you very much for being here today to share your life, experience with us and the event. And I'd like to thank also Tariq and also Tony and everybody else that's actually kind of been kind of part of this journey.
Thank you, Serge. That's very meaningful. Thank you for having me. This has been a very rich conversation. I've also learned a lot from you. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Azim.
Namaste.
Thank you.